hakama pants that the men would wear, those were actually pants. Those were split all the way at least 3 inches up past your knee. So you had to hike up your kimono or wear a shorter kimono. Not to mention all 4 of your ties had to be tied into a knot in the front. Whereas if you look at the end-on hakama skirt, it still has the pleats, but it is not split down the middle, so you don't have to hike up your kimono. You just wear your kimono normally. You just hike it up to your ankles, put your obi on, and you can tie only 2 of these in the front as opposed to all 4, even though it has the 4 straps. You just tie the other one underneath and you just wear it as a skirt. This is also the kind of hakama you see on temple maidens when you go to the Shinto shrines and they have the miko. Now, after the Meiji era, hakama fell out of fashion because you start getting into the 20s. And when you start to get into the 20s, people start leaning more towards the Western wear. You have the flappers, and you have the blouses, and the high heels, and by the Meiji era, the men were all in military outfits or suits. They had almost completely stopped wearing kimono. And that's one of the reasons I didn't actually have photos from the men's wardrobe for the Meiji era, is at this point, you might have seen a kimono jacket thrown over a military uniform, or a fedora with an Edo-style kimono. But for the most part, the men were in Victorian menswear, because you could have those ready-made and shipped over on the boat. The petticoats and stuff, those were a lot more difficult. So until 1930, we start leaning very Western in fashion. When the Japanese go to war in China, which is the forerunner to them getting involved in World War II, patriotism was high. And when patriotism is high in Japan, they want to be very classical. They want to be very traditional, so they start going back to kimono. And you will actually see this from the Meiji era when they get involved in the Sino-Russian War with Russia, or any other time when the political parties want the people to support a war and they start promoting patriotism in Japan, everybody starts wearing kimono again. But when the wars came and started in the 30s, they were rationing fabric. So your sleeves got shorter. Because if you look at the kimono with the green leaves on it versus the kimono with Mount Fuji on it, these are both called tomi-sode. These are black, formal married woman's kimono. The sleeves are much shorter than a furi-sode, which would have hung past your knees somewhere all the way down to your ankles sometime. And even though the sleeves were shorter for a married woman, they got even shorter when the fabric was rationed. And that's one of the ways you can date a kimono. Because everything pre-1940, pretty much, everything pre-1940 is going to be 6 inches longer on the sleeve. Whether it's men's kimono always had a standard length. It was the women's kimono that started getting shorter because the men's sleeves were almost tubular, so they couldn't get much shorter. And this really standardized the kimono that you see in the 20th and 21st century. So the sleeves got shorter and the fabric actually changed. This is when silk changed. Silk in pre-World War II Japan was very, very soft. There is nothing softer than pre-World War II silk. And you started getting a more polished silk, a stronger silk. It's harder to tear silk past World War II. And the reason for this was after the imperial government started confiscating kimonos or rations, like we were doing scrap metal in the war, they were taking the silk and they were trying to make parachutes with it. And it was not strong enough. So they started breeding the silkworms to produce a stronger silk for the parachutes. And they were not able to breed this out of them or breed them back. So World War II changed the face of silk textiles as we know it. So you get a stronger silk and a shorter sleeve in the late 30s, early 40s. And that's pretty much the shape of the kimono we see today in the Heisei era. The only difference is a more modern sensibility of design on the fabric. And if you think Godzilla is fun, I've actually seen full wedding regalia, uchikake, hair things, wig and all, in hot pink, decorated with Hello Kitty. I mean everything down to her tabbies, little Hello Kitty heads and Hello Kitty bows. So this is actually where we stand in Kimono right now.